am a big Baba Ganoush fan, but even more so when it's said in a Kiwi accent. I don't know about you guys, Baba Ganoush.
Everything's better in a Kiwi accent.
Yeah, I feel like the Kiwi accent it's so specific. Can you guys pick it out? I can pick it out pretty easily versus an Australian accent, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I think so. I mean, I'm a fan of this guy's work from back to. I don't know if you guys do this, by the way. We never say the name of the movies until we officially introduce them.
No,
but...
you can say whatever you want.
Okay.
We let it fly. Yeah,
cool. Well,
yeah.
I love Flight of the Conchords, so that was where I was first introduced to the Kiwi accent, I think.
I think there's a lot of American.
And ever since then, surprisingly great New Zealand representation in cinema and media, which you love to see.
Yeah. I had not seen this one before, though, so I was
neither had I, actually.
Oh my god!
Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised.
Me too.
I've loved most of his other movies, so I was like, all right, this is great. Hey everybody, welcome. It's Film Trace. We're back with episode 2 of our Manhunt season. We are doing 2 films from the 2010s, New World from 2013, and Hunt for the Wilderpeople from 2016. Special guest Harry from the Trilove podcast. How you doing, Harry? You're back, right?
I'm doing great. I'm back. I'm so glad to be back. Thanks for having me.
What was the last movie we did with you? I'm trying to remember.
Oh God, it was Wes Anderson, right? Was it French Dispatch and Royal Tenenbaums? I think.
Oh, we did a double. I remember that we did the double header. That was.
I was a really big fan of French Dispatch, and I don't think either of you were particularly.
No,
that's correct. Well, we got to get your Asteroid City take since it's been a.
Yeah, what do you think?
It's even better, folks. It's even better than French Dispatch.
You're killing me.
Yes.
I think it's his best movie, or one of his best movies.
Same here, Harry.
I think I might die in this podcast.
I don't know, man. Literally every time he puts one out, I'm like, am I the biggest Wes Anderson guy I know? Because I just fucking crazy about, except for Isle of Dogs, which I think is dog shit. But
so hot and cold. So hot and cold.
Almost all the rest of them, he just knocks it out of the park. So anyway, have me back to talk about Asteroid City, I guess.
Well, we could talk about that the whole podcast.
Right. And I'm sure we'll talk about Wes Anderson when we get into Hunt of the Wilderpeople.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
A big influence. Yeah, that's a really good point.
Without a doubt. How do we want to jump into this? I mean, I guess did I select both these movies or one of them?
You selected New World. I selected Hunt for the Wilderpeople.
All right. So let's start with New World.
Yeah.
So New World is a movie I had no idea existed.
This is the first time I've heard of it as well.
Yeah, same. I went looking and diving because the Manhunt sort of theme that we're doing this year, we're trying to focus one film on the hunter and then one film on the hunted. And I think one of my favorite sort of genres is sort of the cop going after the criminal genre. And my favorite movie is probably Heat, if I'm sort of going to make a confession.
Hell of a favorite movie. Very good choice.
I mean, I love noir film, and Heat keeps on going up on my list until it hit number 1 probably this year.
Did you read Heat 2? Sorry,
it's like on my list to do. It's
pretty good.
Yeah.
As a giant Miami Vice guy, there's a lot of Miami Vice DNA in there. He really snuck it in there, and I feel very vindicated, right? That this is sort of the trajectory that his career is on.
Oh yeah, of course. He's got his this private website that he's doing for like $60. It's insane. It's like I don't need to see behind the scenes from Ferrari, which was a terrible movie. Anyways, so love Michael Mann, love noir films, and this I don't know. I was diving and digging, and I came across this one, and it's very highly regarded, especially in Korean cinema. So I thought, let's just go for it and see what happens. I don't know. I love this movie. Like. Maybe I'm just like one of those guys that likes the crime stuff or the noir stuff, but I was enthralled the entire time I was watching this movie.
That's great.
And I don't know. I haven't seen a lot of Korean films. I can list them. I've seen The Wailing. I've seen Parasite, and I have seen. There's a third one that I had seen. I forgot. Would you guys have a history with Korean cinema? Where's it at? Do you guys have
I'm
a
big
lot of
fan.
knowledge?
I think my favorite living director is Lee Chang-dong, who is a South Korean director. He's probably best known for Burning, the adaptation of the Haruki Murakami short story. That's a really good movie. My favorite of his is Poetry. He is just sort of known for making these unbelievably devastating movies. I would say that like Burning is like one of his more accessible upper type movies, if that gives you sort of a baseline. But I think he's a phenomenal director. I'm a big fan of Bong Joon-ho. I really like Hong Sang-soo movies. I've only seen like 1% of his movies, which is to say I've seen like a dozen of them, but that's about 1% for him. So yeah, I think Korean cinema is doing some really fucking amazing stuff right now. Incredible. Especially, like Bong Joon-ho is obviously the most prominent, but or like what the West has found, but there are a lot of really great directors working in Korea right now, including apparently this guy. He was around for a while, Park Hoon-joon, right? He wrote I Saw the Devil, right? I think that's kind of his big claim to fame.
Which I've never seen. Have you guys seen it?
I've never seen it. I feel bad.
Yeah, I feel bad
I've heard
too.
It's a little divisive, right? I've heard it's very, very violent, which you can kind of see from this movie, and some people really like it, and some people think it's bad, at least in my experience.
Yeah. So he started out as a screenwriter and then made his leap to directing here recently with Showdown in 2011, and this is only his second film, which came out in 2013. Chris, what's your history with Korean film? I'm obviously a newbie. Harry seems like he's got some deep knowledge here. What about you?
Yeah, I think I'm kind of somewhere in between you guys. Boon Jung-ho was definitely the kind of entry point for me. The host and Okja. I think that was huge when Okja came to Netflix and kind of introduced the world to him even before, Parasite swept everything that year. But I also am a Park Chan-wook apologist.
No need to apologize, man. Okay. He's one of the best who's doing it today. Are you kidding me?
Yeah. Well, I feel like he's one of those directors that if you if you're able to divorce yourself from the fanboyism, he does make some kind of bold choices.
I don't know.
Overly long. I don't know.
I would call The Handmaiden in the top 10, maybe top 5 movies of the 2010s.
Yeah,
I think that movie's a fucking unmitigated masterpiece, right? I mean, Are you doing Decision to Leave, by the way, on this podcast?
No, but I was just going to mention that.
It's kind of from both perspectives.
Totally.
Hunter and Hunted, yeah. And it also, that movie rules. Very, very good.
And then the other one that I have only seen one film of, but it sticks out to me, is Im Sang-soo did a film called The Housemaid back in 2010.
Oh yes,
that was, I think that was actually probably the first Korean movie that I saw that I can think of, anyways. Oh, and then also Tale of Two Sisters, going more along the horror movie line. I love that film from 2003.
It's wild that K-horror is also a whole other discussion.
Right.
Yeah.
But this movie, also had no idea. I saw the Devil credit, and that's been a movie that's always, lingered in the background. And I think I often confused in the past with House of the Devil. And I think that this is like more so than any other film that we've covered on this podcast, where I was just like, I had no idea what I was getting into. Like, it was just like as cold as you could possibly be going into a film. I had to literally text you, Dan, just making sure we're not doing Terrence Malick tonight, right?
Because you also put out The New World or something,
right? Yeah. But I gotta hear what clicked for you, Dan. But maybe before we get into our kind of reactions to the film, where did this come from? Because yes, he definitely sparked kind of a global star for himself with I Saw the Devil, but this movie and a lot of the ones that he did afterward, maybe all of them, mostly stayed in the realm of Korean kind of cinema zeitgeist that never really
it's kind of surprising.
Yeah,
for some reason he hasn't made the leap out. I'm not sure why. And I think like with this film specifically, I don't know. It just seems like one of those movies that could have made that leap pretty easily, but for whatever reason, never. I mean, literally never heard of it.
No, me either. Which, like, I had to keep reminding myself this came out in 2013 because, I mean, for one thing, it stars the Squid Game guy, right? But also, like, the way it looks, I'm like, this movie looks like it was made this year.
It's
like,
beautiful.
It really, it's beautiful and a little bit like uncanny, right? Like, I don't know, like the digital photography or something about it is like so high res. I like it almost got distracting, but it really did feel like this is like really firing on all cylinders technology wise, which is kind of another reason why it's wild that this didn't like break through in any meaningful way.
Yeah. I mean, the visual style is just something that immediately sticks out even from the opening frames. But essentially, like, this is, a film that, based on from what I've read about it, essentially, Park Hoon-jung was obsessed with The Godfather. And he sort of grew up in a time...
You don't say.
Right. He grew up in a time when Korean cinema was kind of not what it was in the last 20 years, and it was a little bit quieter. And so a lot of what was watched was from, the United States and from other parts of the world. And he clearly really loves the crime genre and The Godfather. But the actual story itself is taken from actual police files from like the 1990s and 2000s.
Well, how could they possibly know, though? Because they burned all that guy's files.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Exactly, right. And so it's like, it's one of those things when I was watching it, I'm like, there's so many aspects to this that seem... maybe outrageous or, stranger than fiction, but it does kind of, it rings almost like it's taken from some sort of police file or something, because it's just so absurd.
Well, like, and what I really loved is it totally makes sense that it's a true story, right? Because only in a true story would a movie be so unabashed about making the cops the bad guys.
I know. I mean, Chris, this is like the perfect movie for you because we always get into the police argument on this podcast. Right. But I mean, like,
Simon Zeke is such a piece of shit in this movie. It's crazy. I love it.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where, trying to unwrap it, or at least start to unwrap what this movie is all about and how it approaches sort of the genre of, cops and robbers, manhunt, stuff like that. I think what was immediately telling to me was, it's ultra violent and it has a certain stylized look, but I was like really taken aback by how immediately we have this protagonist who's an undercover cop who's been undercover inside of this corporation, which is essentially sort of a front for an organized crime group. So he's been deep undercover for a very long time. Normally in that sort of genre, I feel like, yes, of course, there's this struggle for the person who's undercover to both be and fit in with these gangster types, but then also be loyal to his police force and what his true mission is. I think in this film, what really struck me immededely is how gray the gray area was. Because in the opening scene, we see the protagonist who's supposed to be, who is an undercover police officer, sort of being a part of an extremely violent, torturous death. So right from the start, you're sort of like, well, what the hell's going on here? Like, am I supposed to feel something for this protagonist? Am I supposed to be rooting for the undercover cop and his handler and Chief Kang, who's trying to sort of oversee this takedown of this criminal organization?
Right.
It's very tough, even from the start, to jump into his viewpoint and sort of view it like we would view a traditional protagonist as sort of wanting to be on his side. I don't know if you guys felt that from the start, that like it was really hard to even root for him, because it was like, damn, this guy's cold-blooded. Like, he's really playing the part. I don't know if you guys felt that.
Yeah, I don't think he would. I mean, I felt very early on that he's not playing a part. He's got like this piece of himself that he hasn't wanted to let go of yet, but that by and large, I mean, we see it from the opening frames, and then we kind of circle back later in the film, that he's made his choice. And it almost seems like it's not so much of a, like, I want this life, that I'm choosing instead of my life as the cop, but more of a like I'm just too deep in this shit.
Right.
It made me. It obviously recalls The Departed and its Korean counterpart, Infernal Affairs, as well as the '92 film Deep Cover, which I don't know. I might be the dissenting voice here, guys, but I don't think this film is nearly as effective as any of those, not even to mention The Godfather.
Maybe I kind of fall between you guys. I ended up liking this movie. I came around on it. Maybe it's like I'm with you, Daniel. Heat's one of my all-time favorite movies. I'm a huge sucker for everything having to do with like crime stories like this. Like I love Johnny Toe's Election to death. I love like Ash's Purest White. I love like every Yakuza movie ever. Like I could watch Yakuza movies for the rest of my life, right? Yeah. And this really heavily recalls those. I will say that like, and I don't know that this guy worked for me as a protagonist that well at first because it felt so stock undercover cop to me. I don't know that I necessarily fully was on board with the moral ambiguity that you were pointing to. Dan, maybe just because Lee Jung-jae is such a emotive, charismatic actor in so many ways that I find him very sympathetic even when he's doing unsympathetic things.
Right,
but maybe that's just a weakness on my part. But also, one thing I really couldn't stand about the beginning of this movie is that I think there are at least 2 or maybe 3 scenes where he does the "I want to get out, goddammit," and his section chief says, "You can't get out, like you're in too deep." I just like I don't know. Like I said, I came around to liking this movie. I found the first particularly like half hour almost interminable, personally. I think that this movie should be 90 minutes long. And I think that like it shows a lot of the like second movie-itis, if you know what I mean. Like, obviously, This guy's got a lot of great ideas, but I just think that like there's so much slack here, and I think that some of the slack took me out of the verisimilitude that you're talking about, Dan. But I don't know, Chris, if you felt that way, or Dan, if you're totally against this opinion.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna fight you both, you two, on this one.
That's fair. Hey, I mean, listen, I would love to love this movie because it's really doing a lot of my favorite shit.
Well, I think like I think the thing that I love about it is there is this trope of and it's actually one of the reasons why I picked the movie, because I think there's lots of films where it's very easy to see who's the good guy, who's the bad guy. And there's a whole lot more movies, especially in the last, 30 years, where, it's kind of like Breaking Bad. The protagonist has to do bad things to do the right thing. I don't know that I've seen a ton of films or in this sense where it was almost like the protagonist truly becomes an antagonist. And what I mean, that like there is nothing redeeming about him.
Oh yeah, I mean, the last thing he does in this movie is order the murder of the three cops, right? Yeah,
and there's definitely the Godfather correlation, of course, but even still, Michael Corleone's in a gangster family, right? He's the son of the guy, like he's part of that institution, so the pull for him is going to be familial.
And it's tragic, right? Like, The Godfather is first and foremost a tragedy about Michael Corleone. This is not a tragedy.
It's not a tragedy.
I don't think. I mean, like, I really think that this is like, I sort of, maybe this is too big take for where we are right now, but like, it's kind of a movie about a dude overcoming his abuser, right? Like, like literally the thing that I like a lot about this movie is that Lee Ja-sung's character is like a victim. Right? Like, I really love that scene when they flash back to show his first interaction with the section chief. And the section chief has got him, and he's like a traffic cop, right? He's like literally a beat cop. He looks like he's about 20 years old. And the section chief is like, "Did you say you're Chinese descended?" And he's like, "Yeah, I guess." And he's like, "Oh, I've got the perfect job for you." And the perfect job ends up being, "Hey, infiltrate this fucking like absolutely psychopath ridden like organized crime syndicate and kill a bunch of people on my behalf. And also, by the way, like if you ever try to get out, I'm going to leak your name to them and they're going to murder you horribly. So like you belong to me now." And you're my
exactly. It's I don't know. I think I get where you guys are coming from, where you're like, I gotta get out. You can't get out. Like, it's almost like a obviously like a parody or something. I love that stuff because it's so genre-y. It's just like I buy.
It's very genre-y.
I buy in immediately. I'm just like, yep. Where are we going?
I'm surprised you haven't used the word workmanlike yet.
I wouldn't use that with this film.
It's kind of too good, right? It's
too good. It's too good. I don't know that I would say that, because it's like, it's almost like Park Hoon-jung wanted to like have just a canvas to work with, and that canvas was like the most boilerplate noir plot ever. Mm-hmm. And then just said, let's just go nuts with it.
And let's cast a bunch of the best Korean character actors, which is to say some of the best character actors in the world, right? Like, I think that, like, man.
I was going to say that Hwang Jung-min, who plays Young Chung, the other Chinese descendant, who kind of takes Jasung under his wing.
Another character I didn't like for the first half hour and then really came around on.
Love
right?
Him.
As soon as he becomes vulnerable, then I'm like, this guy feels like the heart of the movie.
Yeah, those first couple scenes with him, which to be fair is him putting on the front, right? But like, I was like, am I watching like a Grand Theft Auto movie, right? Where it's just like this dude who's just like, the whole point of this character is he's obnoxious and he's supposed to sort of communicate something. But you're right. Like, I think that's my other favorite part of this movie, right? Is that it's essentially a love story.
Yeah, it's like a bromance.
It's a huge romance, right?
Yeah,
like,
that's what he called it in one of the interviews. I was like, okay, yeah.
If you're a freak like me, you read more into it than a bromance, because he didn't give up his buddy even on pain of death. Right?
I mean, come on. That is such a scene. I mean,
it's a good scene, man. It's a really good, it's like, I love watching movies and trying to figure out, like, what was the first scene that this dude thought of? And he was like, oh, there's a movie there. And I swear to God, I bet it was like, oh, the dude is not giving up his undercover friend even on his deathbed, was like the first idea.
That's gotta be it, right? I don't know. I do want to dive a little bit deeper into like this concept of, the protagonist going to the dark side, blah, blah, blah. I mean, what else is there out there? Godfather, obviously, but that doesn't really count because of,
I was going to say that this to kind of put it in the pantheon of like Infernal Affairs and The Departed, is if there was a movie about Jack Nicholson's character, to use the American corollary, choosing the dark side, right? Because spoiler alert for a 20-year-old movie, but he, of course, that's like the final twist in the narrative, is that the main crime boss that they've been attempting to take down since day one, he himself is an undercover cop, right? It's outlandish, it's ridiculous. Scorsese is able to pull it off.
Hell yeah. I've always wanted to do a movie where every single like member of an organization is a cop.
They're just all
and like
cops.
That's the big twist.
Yeah. I think that kernel is interesting, but I do still feel like a lot of it ended up ringing hollow for me, with the exception of Hwang Jung-min's character. I found this kind of almost like distance, like very much, I don't know, you mentioned Grand Theft Auto, Harry. It made me feel like, I was back in the 90s watching all those Tarantino ripoffs where
interesting.
Where it's just like facsimile of a facsimile of a facsimile. And it was really just the cast, and some of the compositions. The DP, by the way, is, I just found out, Park Chan-wook's regular, Chung Chung-hoon, and so I think
totally see it.
Those like that corporate setting is really kind of ominous. But I also felt like there was this kind of like placelessness in the film too, and I don't know if that was just like me being noob American watching, but it very much just felt like like abandoned warehouse, corporate building, and it's just like I almost felt like I was like searching for things that were more interesting than they were. And I dig into like what the director Park Hoon-jung was kind of calling as reference points, or where he came up, and like every interview that's in English anyways that I was able to find, it's just like the Godfather, Yakuza movies, and it just there's something about it that doesn't quite feel as meaty as I think you need to have for a movie that's this tropey.
Yeah, I mean, I think Daniel's probably going to really disagree with this, but it's like that. I'm going to read from your notes, Chris, where Park Hoon-joon, the director, said he wanted to show the top level personalities who conducted board meetings, right? And it's like, I think that, like, my biggest problem with this movie is, I think, just the slack. I think it's 2 hours and 16 minutes long. I think that you could really improve upon it by making it 90 and giving it like a real breakneck pace that would feel very like almost inevitable, right? Like a boulder rolling down a hill. But the other thing is just that, like, I think that there's a little bit too, like, I don't think that the process that they focus on in this movie is all that interesting, which is the part I believe Dan will probably really disagree with. But and like in the absence of that, there are all of these characters that are never really allowed to elevate beyond the stock roles that they play. Like I like the main character a lot. I like what they're doing with him. I really like the central relationships he has in this movie. But the main character himself is a real cipher, right? And I think that, like, his wife has one speaking line in the movie, I believe, and it's when she answers a phone, and then she has a miscarriage, and that's about all of the interactions that we see between those two. You know, like even the other gangsters, I don't know. I mean, like, I think that, like, for a movie that ultimately wants to be a sort of a Godfather character study, I think that maybe we should have spent some more time with this character, right? Like, get into his head a little bit more. And I really like the final scene in this movie, even though I don't think it really works with what the movie is trying to do, just because it, like, okay, like, this feels like a story, right? Like, now this feels like a character I can sort of get a grip on, right? Is that, like, he feels the most alive that he's ever felt when he's just hanging out with this gangster buddy, right? And finally he feels like he belongs somewhere. And I, like, there was something really interesting there. I just wish that had been put somewhere else, right? Or that there was more of that to latch onto.
Yeah. No, I felt like that last scene was like, oh, okay, that's an interesting choice, because I agree with everything both of you are saying, but that's the reason why I love it, right? Is that it's placeless. There is no real, there's supposed to be a central character. He's not really a central character, though. Sure. Right? Like, I think all of the
arguably the protagonist is Choi Min-sik, right? Like, he is by far the most compelling character in this movie. Yeah.
And it's like, there's basically these satellite characters that are sort of you know, moving the movie forward. I think for me, what I find so fascinating about it, and like all those criticisms I think are pretty accurate, but it's sort of like you know, in a way that it's like the film doesn't need a protagonist for its, like, main, I don't know, I guess, point message. And that is that, like, this sense of trying to vie for power, of playing people, you know, the old Machiavellian court politics, stabbing each other in the back, is all this sort of completely meaningless sort of drivel that ultimately you're going to get played and die, right? Like, there's this overwhelming fate happening here, which makes it a very, very good noir film, because that's one of the central tenets there, is that, like, no matter what you do, you're sort of screwed, and, like, the world's going to get you. And I think that's the thing that really stuck out to me, is it didn't matter how smooth Young Chung was, or Lee Ja-sung, how he navigated or had to make this moral choice. It meant nothing. Or all the machinations that Chief Chang had to try and take down this organization also meant nothing. Because ultimately, the power structure in play is not individual people. It's something bigger than them that is propelling things forward. And it basically puts them all, like, rips them all to shreds. Which is a very, very dark message.
Yeah, right? Well, like, and not exactly what I got from it, right? Not that I disagree with you. I think that's a really good point. But, like, what I really liked about this movie, what worked for me, is that like it's kind of a like Choi Min-sik's character, the section chief Kang Huang Choi, getting his comeuppance, right? And like here he is like the puppet master. He like builds the world. Really, he's more responsible for the sort of Machiavellian machinations than anyone, right? And it ends up really biting him in the ass, right? Because like here we've got this character who's like a ticking time bomb we follow throughout this entire movie, who is constantly like begging him, like, please let me out, please give a shit about me, please, like, and then like he ends up allying with the one person who does give a shit about him, right? Like there's one sort of selfless act in this movie, and it's his buddy who refuses to give him up as a cop, even though he has like nothing to gain from it, right? Just because he loves his friend. And like that one act of sort of like kindness is the one thing that like nobody could anticipate, that really like debalances this entire power dynamic, right? And ends up getting Choi Min-sik's character killed, right? Because it leads directly to Lee Ja-sung being like, actually, like, I'm just gonna like go with the people who actually maybe ostensibly give more of a shit about me. And so it's sort of, you know, it's like, if you really don't care about these people, like, don't let them find out, right?
It's like it's self-preservation 101, right?
Right. And that's sort of like why this triumph works for me at the end, right? Because it's sort of like, well, like, you backed this guy into a corner and you gave him no choice, and like, what did you think was going to happen, right? Sort of thing.
Yeah. Just to be clear, when you guys reference the final scene, you are not referring to the epilogue flashback, right?
Oh, I was, yeah.
I was too.
Oh, you were? Okay.
Which is a scene that I like and that I think totally doesn't work for the movie, because
I love the scene. Also think that it does not work at all.
It's so dumb, man. I'm sorry, but like the whole point of that scene is supposed to be that this dude was ultimately always going to be a gangster because he loves it, right? Like Lee Ja-sung, like, he smiles at the end. That's the last beat we get, is that like, oh, he always loved this, he always wanted to be a part of it. That is not my reading of this character, right?
No,
like, I don't think this movie works at all with that. Like the tragedy of this character is that like the cops are so shitty that like he ended up having to become a gangster because it was his only way to stay alive.
Right. And my read was that it was like more focusing on that specific relationship of like,
oh yeah, sure, that's part of it.
It almost felt like, you know, like the Butch Cassidy scene where Burt Bacharach sings, and it's just like, oh, we love having fun together. It just also involves murder.
See, that's the part I love, man. Like that was the part
they would have
that
leaned into that. Yeah,
they were like, "Oh, these guys are Kyodai. They're like Yakuza brothers, and like they're going to take over the world together." That was the shit I was all about. But I agree. Like and like that comes back to like the whole idea that like basically this is it's a weirdly humanist movie, right? Because the idea is that like Lee Ja-sung is just, he's taking the actions he has to take to remain as human as he can be. And it turns out like through a series of like completely wild happenstance, the only way he can survive and maintain his grip on any sort of selfhood is to kill all of these cops and become the leader of this underworld, right? And it's sort of like we follow that progression, and I don't know, I bought it, right? And it's like that's the effective part of the movie. I don't know, maybe you're winning me over a little bit, Daniel. I kind of like that idea.
Oh, you insidious bastard. So before we move on to our other film, sure. We have to mention that ever since this film's release, it got it was in a bidding battle for an American remake. Sony Pictures won it. It was going to be written by Will Fetters, who did a number of Nicholas Sparks adaptations and like worked with Clint Eastwood.
So unnatural choice, you're saying.
Exactly. So like that languished in development hell, obviously, and then also the director said that, you know, upon its success in Korea, that he was planning to make a sequel. And then he changed his mind and said, never mind, it's going to be a prequel. Nice. And then nothing
Bad
happened.
Choice, IMO.
So,
here's a hot take. Like, has there ever been a good prequel? I mean, like, maybe Furiosa, right? But, like, even Furiosa, like, the worst part of that movie is that it's a prequel. Like, don't do prequels, you guys. Like, it never works out.
Yeah. So, where do we see this movie in terms of legacy. Especially, I think like I had to text Dan because I was like, I'm kind of struggling with how it fits into the Manhunt genre. I think you did a very nice job of breaking it down. This idea of the hunter becoming the hunted, but it also feels kind of like placeless, not just in terms of its like geographical representation on screen, but also in terms of like it's kind of a gangster movie. It's kind of a noir film, but like it's not really any of those. And like I said, the vibe I got, especially based on that epilogue flashback, is like 15-year-old boy watching Tarantino movies for the first time. So I don't know. Make the case, Daniel. What staying power does this movie have?
Oh, I mean, it's basically a masterpiece. I mean, like, obviously. The problem with it, though, is that, like, I don't... And the thing that... I think the thing that ringed most true to me is that it's a very Korean film, and the fact that it is talking a lot about loyalty. And it is a loyalty that, like, Americans cannot understand. And we will not understand. Like, it is like a very different cultural value over there, in the sense of loyalty, and betrayal of that loyalty is so severe that I don't know. It's like a very interesting film to dive into, especially if you're not from that culture, to kind of understand it a little bit more and be like, I think it's a very, it's a great critique of it on some level.
Sure.
It's someone viewing his own sort of culture and be like, we value all of these things very highly, but like, what do they actually mean?
Well, and what I really love about this movie is that, and I don't know very much about the Korean concept of loyalty, right? So I can't really speak to that. But I love that, like, there's something reciprocal about it, right? Like, this is a guy who is basically learning not to take shit anymore because of that idea of loyalty, right? It's like here's a guy who is going to be marched to his death by his boss, and sort of has this blind allegiance to the police force and the section chief, just kind of because he's been taught it's the right thing to do, right? And then he slowly kind of comes to realize, like, hey, like, this is a really raw deal. If I persist in this, I'm going to be killed by this guy who doesn't give a shit about me. And like, he gets this other way out, and he finds some people who actually might reciprocate that loyalty you're talking about, Dan, and he takes it, right? And there's something really interesting about that evolution to me.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. That's like, that's what grounds the movie to me, is that sort of cultural relevance. I think if the average American sees this, it'd be like, well, screw him, screw the chief, screw this guy, I'm gonna do my own thing. But like, that's not the initial reaction I think most people from that culture would have. It would be completely different. And I think that, like, that's what I see in this movie. It's like this extreme struggle to overcome something that is so ingrained in somebody.
Yeah, it's like an abuse movie, right? It's like you have this terrible relationship that is sort of like all you know, and it's about breaking out of that pattern.
Yeah, exactly. And kind of it's overcoming. It's a triumphant movie, like Boys in the Boat. It's like that.
Oh, I mean,
or like Hunt for the Wilderpeople.
Hunt for the Wilderpeople.
There you go.
Thank you for that perfect segue. This is a movie that, well, first of all, I'm very pleasantly surprised that you guys got to watch it for the first time. But I saw this movie when it initially came to streaming shortly after its stateside limited release back in 2016. And it was kind of on a lark. Like, I had seen What We Do in the Shadows, the movie that Waititi made the year previous.
It's great. Yeah, love it.
Yeah, and I was like, it's kind of weird that he's like doing a pivot into like almost like family film territory, but I was like, I got to give it a shot, especially because Rhys Darby from Flight of the Conchords is in the cast list. So when I pressed play, I was just like immediately pulled in, and it immediately became one of my favorite movies of the year. And I still kind of come back to it. So I watched it for the third time for this episode, and it just plays better every time. And I feel like it's kind of a unicorn movie, which is especially unique because I don't think other than, I feel like Marvel movies are on a completely different plane of existence than other movies, but I don't think I've liked a Taika Waititi.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't have the juice, man. He doesn't have the juice. It's wild, right?
Because what happened to the juice?
What happened to the juice? Because like,
is it Rita Ora?
Especially like after 2014, What We Do in the Shadows, and then Hunt for the Wilderpeople, it's like he's riding high, right? And then like, maybe I'm not a Marvel movie fan, right? But like people even loved Thor Ragnarok, right? So like he was running the table like for a while, and then 2019 and Jojo Rabbit happened, and I guess that's what happened to the juice for Taika Waititi, is he made that movie and it broke his brain somehow, maybe, I don't know. But you're right, Chris, like I was really surprised because unfortunately, maybe this is, I was sort of dismissive of Waititi, right? Like, especially this era. I was like, oh yeah, I loved What We Do in Shadows, but then Jojo Rabbit happened. I don't really love Our Flag Means Death. He just sort of like, he became associated with this sort of like really treacly, not interesting sort of approach to comedy whimsy that I'm no longer interested in. And then I went back to this movie and I was like, oh yeah, like there was a time when this was like really like, I get it again. I feel like this movie helped me rediscover what the appeal was.
Right. So then we have to throw it over to our resident Jojo Rabbit defender, Dan.
Oh my! Wow.
Love the movie. Absolutely love it.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I kind of should hate him and his style because I was one of those guys, not that they're like in me, just because we're both from New Zealand, that they're the same thing, but I actually disliked Flight of the Conchords.
What?
Yeah, it was a big thing for me. You can ask anybody that knew me back then, but like I would go on rants about when people would ask me about Flight of the Conchords because it was always the show people would bring up. And I'd always be like, I'm not going to watch Flight of the Conchords.
Oh, I actually, as a fellow contrarian, I can respect this. Right?
Yeah, and that's what it was. It was very
everybody talks about something, you want to just be like, fuck that, just because.
I'm like, no, it can't be that good. It is quite good. I mean, it's not bad. But I think it's sort of like, his style to me is something that is so overt and over the top that in general, I tend to dislike stuff like that because it's so in your face. But Hunt for the Wilderpeople is like, it's a great movie.
It's pretty irresistible, right?
Yeah, it is irresistible. His style just fits this story so freaking well. And it creates a lightness about something that's not very light. Like, it's really dark stuff, what he's going into, foster care, death and sort of social isolation and alienation.
That one throwaway line about how his best friend was maybe molested and then murdered by a foster parent.
Yeah.
I didn't catch that until my latest watch because I feel like some of that darkness, you can let it go if that's not where you're there for. And I think especially watching this on the heels of New World kind of opened my eyes a bit more to the grief and the trauma that is so elegantly packaged in this kind of like twee little like Odd Couple story.
And you guys don't like Jojo Rabbit? Anyways.
Well, I should be clear. I feel bad, but I don't think I love this movie. At least not as much as you guys do. I feel like it was really wild. Like the jokes for me in this movie are like almost exactly 75% hit rate, where like literally it was like 3 out of every 4 were really working for me. And then something would happen, like the scene that he's in, Taika Waititi, right?
That's bad.
That's a terrible fucking scene in the middle of this movie. Or just like, every now and then there's just a clunker joke, right? Like there's just a joke that doesn't work for me. And I also just think it's like, it's a little too broad, and I know it's broad on purpose, but like it really struck me while I was watching this that like there's almost no plot to this thing.
Yeah.
And like, I kept wondering, like, how is this going to end? Like, how are they possibly going to end this? And then like it ends with the biggest sort of punt of all time, right?
Come live with this family with us.
And just like, oh yeah, we were the subject of this like historic manhunt and everybody thinks that you were a kidnapping madman, but like a year later you're living in the like world's most chill halfway house, which, hey, maybe criminal justice in New Zealand is like that. I don't know.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
That was what I was thinking of too. It's just like, hey, maybe I'm just like used to the American version of this movie where
right.
There's no way that guy survives, right?
Yeah. Like, oh, do they actually do rehabilitation there? Like, it felt very foreign. And I also think that like this film is on a kind of playing field that is, it's just like so hard to like for me to find fault with it, because for every instance in which it's doing something that's quote unquote easy or facile, it's easy to just like kind of toss it off because it's like, oh, because that's both A, absurdist, and B, a family film contrivance that like can be easily forgiven because it does what we want. Like, it's very much like a fantasy in that sense. Right?
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, and like I'm thinking about it, and like my big criticism of this movie is basically that like I wish there was more tension, right? Like I wish that the kid was a little bit more actually hard-nosed and a little bit more like juvenile delinquent, right? Because like there's really no question, like he's got the soul of a poet, he's got a heart of gold, he's a beautiful child, right? Despite his, and like similarly with Sam Neill, right? Like I think that like their odd coupleness, like it never really works for me because it's resolved so quickly, and it's like it feels like, oh, like these guys are going to be in love, like they're going to love each other, and it feels like that happens so quickly to me. But I don't know, maybe that's not, and also like not to play devil's advocate with myself, but it's like you knew that was going to happen in this movie, right? Like this is a family movie, so like I don't know that this movie would be improved upon by belaboring it necessarily.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the thing that stood out to me a little bit is I love the tone. I thought it was really funny. Sam Neill's amazing in this. I mean,
dude,
like,
Sam Neill, the GOAT, the best of the best.
Yeah,
I mean, so good to see him in
this whole role. But I think like, maybe this like can segue into talking about Wes Anderson or something. But like, I love this movie because of the vibe and the humor. The story to me is kind of dog shit. Like it
barely exists, right?
Yeah,
like
it's like so dumb, and like is it heartwarming? Sure. I mean, it is, but it's also just kind of like stupid. It's like you gotta. I think that's the one thing that like, I don't see myself ever coming back to this movie. Not because it's not good, but because it's just not. So like where you guys didn't see a lot of meat on the bones in New World, I saw like a whole universe going on there. Here I'm sort of like, it's a really funny movie, and it's well, I mean, it's really a sketch comedian's movie, right? You can it's like What We Do in Shadows, where it's like that movie, which I think is even more successful than this movie, but like you can tell why they made it a TV show. It basically already was. It was like it was a series of scenes sort of like pieced together, and the point was that this scene is funny and this scene is funny, and that's kind of how I feel about this movie too, right? Is that like he had a series of ideas about these two characters, and once he had enough ideas, he made it into a movie, and it didn't really matter if it was if there was a story or if there was sort of anything uniting these scenes beyond the basic premise.
Wow. I mean, on one level, I get what you guys are saying. I think that I think that just because the plot of a film is simple doesn't necessarily mean that it lacks depth. And
I'm with you, Chris.
I found, and once again, with the caveat that it's very much like on a very specific kind of wavelength where it's like you have to. It's like kind of like watching like a B movie, right? You're not going to watch it and expect in any kind of contrivance to be subversive or anything like that.
Right. I mean, I laughed, I cried, right? Like
exactly.
When this movie works, it works really, really well. Like,
and
You do want to see this come through, right? Like, these characters are so charismatic. They're so fun to watch. They really pop on screen. And it's like, you know, like, I know that they're going to become best friends and sort of change each other's lives, and everything's going to be all right. We're all going to sing Kumbaya at the end. But like, I really want to see that happen, right? Like, I think that, like, you're right, Chris, that when it's done well enough, there's really no point in sort of critiquing it on that basis.
But I do think, like, the main kind of way that wavelength works, and maybe I can get you in on this, Dan, because I think that's where the movie really stings, is like in those small moments, even like the montages with pop songs, which is often
too many pop songs in this movie.
It is very much used as like a segue crutch. But it's done in a way that I like. Even that, it stands out like a sore thumb. But I'm like, and like the quick zooms, a la Wes Anderson and Hal Ashby. I felt very much like it's like the bag of tricks that doesn't matter, because the way that Julian Dennison like looks to the side, or the way that Sam Neill like looks to the ground, is just like, it's just one of those things where you've got the right people in front of the camera and the right people behind the camera. And I think there's like a dimension to it that I feel needs, like, I don't know, a little more explication from my point of view, especially going back to like the Manhunt genre, because maybe even more so the New World, this one is like very much an outlier in the sense that it's a comedy, in the sense that there's a child involved, in the sense that like,
I saw that prompt in your notes. You were talking about how like there aren't any comedic examples of this, and I guess like the two I could think of was Midnight Run, which I watched recently, which is a big example, right? And then I guess kind of Raising Arizona, or like parts of Raising Arizona. But you're right, it's wild that this isn't leveraged for comedy more often, because it feels really like, especially that child services character is such a like classic trope that I feel like you don't see that often. Which I guess like Moonrise Kingdom is the obvious analog, but that's not really a comedy. That is, like many Wes Andersons, secretly one of the saddest movies ever made.
Exactly. And so I think that's part of what does the heavy lifting for me, is that because I'm less invested in the actual hunt, and I'm more invested in like what that kind of metaphor stands in for these characters. Like, it very much feels, it almost feels, to make a corollary with like the bromance in New World, where it's just like these two guys are like just complete outsiders, and yet they're, you know, the number one, number two targets of everybody else, and they're living out this fantasy that they know is going to come to an end. One knows it a little more than the other because of age and wisdom, and that feels really, it almost like there's a moment in that final showdown scene where I like felt choked up, not unlike I felt choked up like at the end of Terrence Malick's Badlands, is what it made me think of.
Ooh,
I know it's an insane connection.
No, that's a sick pull. I'm into it.
You're insane. You're nuts. Take them away, folks.
I also think Dan's gonna hate me because I played the parent card with our analysis.
Here we
Trap
go.
last episode. But man, that
you guys did Trap?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh hell yeah! I'm gonna go back and listen to that immediately.
Yeah.
The parent, the single parent, the foster system, like all that stuff is not only dark, it also is just like, it's a personal pull for me, and it's going to rise above, and you know, made me for a good 3 years to make me think that Thor Ragnarok was better than the average Marvel movie. So
yeah, no, I hear you on that. I mean, there's a lot of moments in this movie that were poignant. I mean, especially like at the end, where like Sam Neill's going, it's over, like that. That's like devastating.
See, but that is really my biggest criticism maybe of this movie. And like, I hate to compare it because it's not fair, but like, you can't help but think about something like Moonrise Kingdom when you're watching this, or like Wes Anderson, like we were talking about. And it's like, that to me, my favorite thing about Wes Anderson movies is, like I was saying before, how they're all secretly the saddest movie ever made, right?
Yeah.
And they're like, I think a lot about like how Moonrise Kingdom, like there's that scene when Bill Murray and his wife are lying in bed together, and they're just talking about like, what are we going to do about these kids? Like how are we going to give them a better future? And they just say like, I don't know, we don't have enough to like do that. And then they just like sit in that moment, and it's like, that's kind of, I would have liked more sort of confrontation with the actual sort of darkness in the periphery in this movie, maybe.
But just sort of. That's what you go with Jojo Rabbit, though, guys.
No. It's a bridge too far.
I don't know. I will make that argument, though. I'm going to make the argument.
Imagine if the funeral scene from Wilderpeople was an entire movie and that character was also Hitler.
Right.
But I think that there's like his style. I love his style, and when it was put in that the back story of World War II and Hitler, it just for some reason it worked for me incredibly well.
The nicest thing I can say about Jojo Rabbit is I think I can buy that it's well intentioned. Sure. Like I don't think it's an evil movie the way people think it is.
It is that juxtaposition between like insane darkness and absurdity. For some reason, that worked incredibly well to like defang like all of this stuff and just kind of see it for something. Maybe see it from a different perspective than we see it. You know, obviously, it's like burned into our heads from history. Here, it's sort of like, it's playful, it's nice. It's an enjoyable story. There's nothing negative I could say about this movie, and that's probably the negative thing about it, right? Like, it's just quaint. It's nice.
Right.
It really does. You know, I mean, if you ignore the fact that it's working on you, it does feel like the biggest sort of base hit ever, right? Where it's like it's like these characters are going to develop this relationship that is heartwarming and is going to change their lives for the better, both of them. And it's just sort of like, that is what happens. There's not a lot of ambition here. It's kind of like, maybe this is a stretch now, but it's kind of the polar opposite of Jojo Rabbit in some ways, right? Where it's like, I think that this is a movie that is 100% nailing a bunt, essentially. And Jojo Rabbit is like swinging for the fences and, in my opinion, striking out miserably.
Wow. But I'm not a sports metaphor, guys, but that
yeah, this is Cody. This is Cody's influence on me from the podcast shoutouts. But you know, it's like this guy, like he did Hunt for the Wilderpeople, and it was so well received. And I wonder if he was just like, I can do no wrong. I'm going to do my movie about sort of like how Nazis are human too.
Oh, that's exactly what happens.
And like, it's just sort of like, maybe take a step back, big guy.
And the also interesting connection between those two films, besides Waititi's involvement and good intentions, they both are adaptations, right? And I think that one thing
that's a good point
that comes from this one. That he like willfully did is like the Reese Darby character and so many other like more comedic elements are very much inventions added to kind of balance out that darkness that's more present in the novel. And Jojo Rabbit is very much like I think it's him like getting too big of a head for sure. And so I can't imagine the Oscar nominations help. And then we got Free Guy, so oh well.
That was kind of fun.
Wait, he didn't direct Free Guy, did he?
No, he was enough involved as a cast member that I'm holding him culpable for.
Oh, I'm into that.
Amazing.
I love finding things to blame Taika Waititi.
What about Next Goal Wins? Did you guys see that?
I did not see that. I've heard it's terrible.
No interest.
I've heard it's like transphobic. Ugh, really rough stuff. Yeah, some rough stuff going on.
You don't want that. No.
Yeah. The last thing, perhaps, since we talked about like the Korean culture aspect for New World and like kind of placing yourself there and not really seeing it from that American perspective, the kind of only bit of controversy regarding this film, Julian Dennison and Taika are both Maori, right? Indigenous New Zealanders, and one of the conscious choices that Waititi did here was to not like show the more cultural, spiritual, religious aspect of the Maori people.
He meets some Maori people, and they're just people. Or like,
right.
I don't mean just people, but you know, they're very modern.
Right.
They have a house. They have, you know, I think like the dad is over across the street watching the soccer game with his buds. Yeah.
Right. Ricky Baker is seen as kind of like a Maori hero. That's as far as it goes to like any kind of cultural connection between the characters. And you know, it's one of those double-edged sword things, right? It's like on the one hand, it's great that we're seeing like more depiction that's not based in like tropes and stereotypes for a particular ethnicity. But on the other hand, it's like, are you just westernizing everybody because you know that that's what's going to, you know, play better? What's the phrase, Dan? Play in Omaha?
Oh, play in Peoria.
Peoria, okay. And I don't know. I feel like that's also something that is, you know, tough for three white guys to talk about on a podcast, but it's nevertheless important, I think, to mention and to see. Like, I don't know. Next Goal Wins. Is there any kind of like cultural aspect there? It feels very much like Taika and Julian Dennison, to be honest. Like he did Deadpool 2, and then now he's going to be in this Kyle Mooney movie Y2K for A24. It very much is like, you know, one of those hard truths of you know, the diversity in representation in cinema is, you know, we're getting better in terms of just straight up representation, but are we getting better in terms of like not just westernizing all other cultures? Yeah. Not really.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, like you're right. Like we're white guys. I'm a white guy. Surprise. And I can't really speak to this. I will say that, like, I guess the one thing, I mean, I liked seeing Maori characters in this movie. I think it's cool. I think it does elevate Ricky Baker's character a little bit, right? Like I think that there's something racially charged about the fact that like he's this misfit kid that nobody wants, and he's bouncing from foster care to foster care. He's also an ethnic minority, right? It's like, and he's an indigenous ethnic minority. Maybe that colors the way that he is perceived. Maybe that is a part of why he acts out the way that he does at the beginning of this movie, right? And like there's even a sense that, like, you know, and like I can't speak to this again because I'm not that familiar with Maori culture, but like that kind of informs his journey in this movie too, right? Is like he is sort of like getting to know like his home country the way that, like, you know, somebody of his ancestry would, right? Like he's developing the knack, and he's getting to know the bush, right? And it's sort of like he finds a home there.
Yeah, no, that I like that read.
He maybe wouldn't have in modernity. And there's an element of that. I don't know. I mean, I think I really liked that part. In fact, I would say that that's sort of like an example of like Taika Waititi being more successful with how he broaches the subject of ethnic minorities, right? Compared to some of his other movies, which shall remain nameless.
Obviously, you're talking about What We Do in the Shadows and the
right, vampires.
Yeah. Of course. Okay, that is quite a rundown for two movies that arguably are, you know, two of the more minor entries in our series this season. But before we say goodbye and tease what's happening next week and give Harry a chance to properly hype up the Try Love podcast, can we do some trivia, boys?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Okay, so the way we've got trivia this season is since it's Manhunt movies, I tracked the locations throughout the entire script for 5 films, also from the 2010s, also that are very much about trying to find somebody. So number 1, I'm just going to list off the locations. First person to yell out the answer for what film it is from the 2010s that fits the Manhunt mold gets points, and best out of 5 wins. Are you guys ready for some trivia?
Let's do it.
We're ready. Let's go.
Yes. Okay, so the deal is I've got 5 films, and best out of 5 wins. You have to guess the film based on location of scenes. So I've mapped through the entire script of these 5 films to get as many unique locations, because we're doing Manhunt movies, and all these different places were attempts at finding the man, so to speak, in the respective movies
I
from
sort of
the
remember
2010s.
this. Yeah. Okay.
I tried to pick some pretty obvious ones, so we're going to start with a pretty easy one.
We'll be the judge of that, Chris.
Oh, yeah. That is true. That is true. start out in the Texas Panhandle countryside, and then we move specifically to Daughtry, Texas.
No Country for Old Men?
Nope.
It's a good guess. It's a good guess.
2010. And then we're in a saloon, and then we're on a Chattanooga, Tennessee country road.
Oh.
Moving into Gatlinburg, Tennessee.
Gatlinburg?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Is this 12 Years a Slave?
You're in the right territory.
But Drink Unchained.
There you go.
Yeah. God damn it. All right, pretty good. Yeah, good one.
The Tennessee, I think, gave it away.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. 1 point to Dan. Number 2.
I stole that one, by the way. I stole it.
No, it was an alley-oop. Yeah.
I'll take like 10% credit.
Yeah.
It's not enough for an actual point, but you know what I mean.
I'll add it into the calculator. Okay. Number 2, this is more difficult because I didn't realize this film took place anywhere, to be honest. Conyers, Pennsylvania. A subdivision called Fairmount Circle.
Prisoners.
What the fuck is
Let's go.
That's incredibly impressive. I'm getting my ass kicked.
Did you watch it recently?
No, I just came to me.
It just came to you. That's incredible.
Well, it's like I think
he was imprisoned there actually for an extended period of time, so it's very near and dear to him.
I think. Yeah, Conyers, Pennsylvania. I don't know. It's just like one of those really depressing places. No offense, people from Pennsylvania. It's very depressing there.
I suppose you're.
And this is coming from a guy from Jersey, so
yeah, you know, the next door neighbors. I got to shit on them a little bit.
Okay, number 3. You still have a chance to come back, Harry.
It's anybody's game, as we would say.
Yeah. And this one kind of gives it away right at the top. The Ardsley on Hudson train heading towards New York.
Girl in the Window.
It's not what it's called.
Girl on the Train?
Yes, Harry, nice work.
I had to steal it back. Sorry, Dan. That was way more of a steal. You get like 70% credit for that one, if I'm being honest.
Man. What was it? What did I say? Girl in the Window?
Is that like Amy Adams' Woman in the Window?
I read both of those.
You read those novels? Oh.
Yeah, me and Molly Molly, friend of the podcast, did a book club, and
that's incredible.
I think we read at least one of them.
I heard Girl on the Train was a decent book.
Got to be better than the movie.
The movie's fun.
I heard the movie was not very good. Okay, good.
Oh, it's fun. It's literally
like a Lifetime movie,
super
right?
hammy.
Yeah.
Super hammy.
Is that Gillian Flynn or is that somebody else? That's somebody else, right?
I assume it's her, maybe.
They're all
You
good.
read the book. What do you mean? You don't know?
I don't remember.
Oh my god.
I don't know. Probably.
Paula Hawkins.
Okay.
Okay.
Sure.
Wait, yeah, there's one of those. Yeah, well, there's a whole long story behind that. Anyways, let's keep going.
Okay, number 4, Boston Harbor Ferry, to the island dock, to a compound, to a graveyard, to the Ashcliff Hospital for the Criminally Insane.
Gone Baby Gone? No, it's too early.
Is this a Red Dragon?
Nope.
Oh.
To an asylum cell, and then a mausoleum.
Huh.
A mausoleum.
And then a Tudor mansion.
Knives Out?
And then to Ward C of the hospital. And then
he's searching. He's manhunting himself, really.
Yeah,
in that picture.
really.
Grab that gun in the police station.
Oh my god.
Then a promontory at the edge of the island. A cliff face, if you will.
A what?
A cliff face.
Moonlight Kingdom?
Nope.
Moonrise Kingdom? It's not Moonrise Kingdom.
You're doing lots of portmanteau titles, which I love.
Yeah. Is it The Good Son?
Oh God, what a movie!
The last scene takes place on a cliff, right? I don't know.
That is true. And then the beach below the cliff. Wow. Once again, I'm going to emphasize Boston.
Right. Is it the? It's The Departed. Yeah.
Nope.
No, it's too early.
Departed. Okay.
You're like red hot, both of you.
The town?
No, with the director. Remember, it takes place on an island.
Oh, Shutter Island.
Boom.
Nice. I've never seen Shutter Island. That's one of the Scorsese's I've never seen.
Don't do it.
I've heard it's not great. I don't know. I'm gonna be a completionist eventually. I just haven't ever gotten
Shutter
it.
Island is like my ultimate character judgment. If somebody likes it, I'm like, I don't.
Yeah,
There's conversations over.
That probably means I'll love it, right? That'll probably be my new favorite Scorsese.
Yeah. No, if you like Scorsese's Cape Fear, there's no reason why you wouldn't like Shutter Island.
No, that's not true.
Number 5 for posterity, and we give it to the guest if you get close to beating Dan Perry.
Okay. Wow. Thank you. Yeah. I appreciate that handicap.
Yeah. New rule? What the?
Listen, I'll take all the help I can get.
And this one, I'm just gonna say the first location, a Swedish Vista.
Oh, Girl with the Dragon Tattoo.
There you go.
Oh, right. Sure. The Swedish film.
Yeah, the one Swedish film that was popular.
Very good, Dan. I see victory. You are truly the better Manhunter.
Oh, there you go. Thank you so much, Harry. Can you please hype for us what you've been up to on Trilove?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Trilove is a podcast I make with my friends about movies we see and people we meet at the Trilon movie theater in downtown or South Minneapolis. Chris has been a guest. Daniel will have to get you on sometime. I think we've broken that rule about having to have actually been to the Trilon, so I'm sure we'll get to that. And I think we just finished recording our episode on, or I guess by the time this comes out, we will have recorded on Goodfellas. So that's coming up soon. Spoilers, fond of that film. I think it's quite a movie. Yeah. So that's going to be a positive conversation, I think. But yeah, so that's where you can find me. You can find me on Twitter at PunishTake. You can find me on Letterboxd at Shiitake Harry.
Awesome. Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. That was so fun.
Yeah. Definitely check out Trilove, everyone. And next week, Dan, what do we have in store?
We have Memories of a Murder from 2003, and then The Bourne Identity from 2002.
Oh my God. And I'm back. I'm just going to be on that one as well, right, guys? That's what you're saying?
Come on back.
Oh, I'm super
I've never seen Memories of a Murder, so it's going to be
shit.
Yeah,
let's go. It's great. In my opinion. So enjoy.
Yeah, it'll be a good one. Thanks for listening, everybody. This has been Film Trace. All right, let me shut this off.